Hello guys, welcome to the next session in TestNG series. So this is another important concept in the TestNG, that is parameterization in TestNG. So why do we require parameterization? Okay, so parameterization means running your test case with different set of data. That means you are testing some functionality from the UI with the different type of data that user can input in the input fields in your application. For example, in our application, let's say login functionality for user ID, for password, we can test it with the alphabets. We can check with the alphanumeric characters, only alphabets or only numbers, right? So this kind of combinations are used while performing the manual testing. So same we can do in the automation testing as well. We should never hard code the values for the input data that we are using for any test case. Okay, if you are inputting any value on the UI in your automation test case, we should not hard code that value. We should always make that function or that test case generic, so that we can send data to that test case from outside of the TestNG method or TestNG class. So that data can be fetched from a database, or you can use the Excel sheet, you can use the CSV file or JSON files, right? So similarly, in our TestNG, which is already a robust framework, so there is already a feature by which we can perform the parameterization in TestNG. Okay, so in TestNG, parameterization can be done by using two types. One is by using the @parameter annotation in the TestNG class, okay, in the TestNG method, and you need to define this parameter tag in the TestNG XML file and its value. Okay, this is the one way. And second way is by using the data provider annotation. Okay, so first let's see how we can perform the parameterization by using @parameter annotation. Okay, so this can be done at the TestNG test level or TestNG suite level in the TestNG XML file. So for demonstration purpose, I have created a simple test method. This is the setup method. Okay, I have used @test annotation here. That means this method is a TestNG method. It is not a normal method. So this is a basic setup method. Before we start testing our actual functionality in the application, first we need to open the browser, right? We will open the browser depending upon your requirement. It can be Chrome, Edge or Firefox. Then we will open the URL. So you can perform your automation testing on different servers, right? UAT server, QA server, dev server, integration server is there, production server is there. So you can provide that value to this method. Okay, so it will open browser, then it will open the URL of the application, then it will open after opening the URL on the login page, it will use the user ID that is provided by the user and the password. Okay, when these two things are valid one, then user will be able to log in, and then we will start our executing the feature test cases. Okay, so all these values, four values, browser, URL, user ID and password, all these are the parameters to this setup method, and we should never hard code these values. Okay, so let's say you hard code this browser value, for example, then you will be able to run the test cases on single browser only. Let's say you hard code to Chrome, then you can run your automation only on Chrome browser. What if I want to run my automation on the Firefox or Edge browser? Then again I will have to change the value, come into this class in this method, again change the value to Firefox, and again I need to run my test case. So there are different scenario and places where you need to change the values. If you hard code the values, you will require to change all the values in all the test methods or TestNG classes at different places. Okay, that is never recommended to hard code the values. Okay, so all these data you should get from outside of the TestNG class or TestNG method. Okay, so that as I already said, you can get it from the XML, CSV file or JSON, right? From the config.properties file also you can get, or you can take it from the TestNG XML file. So this method required these four parameters. Okay, so let us get this using the string. So all these values will be in the string format, right? So browser, let's say browser name, then comma string. We have another one is URL, user ID, string, password. So this method is going to use these four parameters. Okay, four parameters, and these their values will be sent from outside of the TestNG class from the XML file. Okay, so we should never hard code these four values. so that we can pass different set of these four values from the XML file, and our test case will run according to our values of these parameters. Okay, so first way that we are going to do for parameterization in TestNG is by using this parameter annotation in the TestNG class, and you need to use this parameter tag in TestNG XML. Okay, so very simple. This is my @test method, okay, which is going to use the parameterization from the XML file. Okay, so above @test annotation, you need to use this parameters annotation from the TestNG dot annotations. Okay, @parameters, and inside this curly bracket we can get the value of the different parameters. So we will just have to provide the parameters name here that we have defined in the TestNG XML file. Okay, so before we provide the parameters name here, let us define it in the TestNG XML file. Okay, so for our project, I have already created the TestNG XML file, and here I have created two tests here, test1 and test2. Okay, and both tests is going to run this setup method. Okay, so for both this test, I am going to pass different set of values for this four parameters. Okay, that is what the parameterization means. Our aim is to run our test case with different set of data. Okay, so for the setup method, I am going to use different values of browser. From one test I will pass the Chrome, for other test I will pass the Firefox, right? Similarly, I can provide the different values for URL, user ID, and different passwords. So in TestNG XML file, you need to provide this parameters tag after the test tag. Okay, parameter, then name equal to the name of your parameter. Okay, so first parameter is my browser, so I will simply write browser. Okay, and then space value equal to, in double quote you need to provide the value of this browser parameter. Okay, and here we will end the parameter tag. Okay, so this is for one parameter and it is applicable for the test. Okay, so as we are going to see for the test level and suit level, so currently we are going to see how we can do it at the test level. So this is my first test, test1, and under that test I have defined this one parameter, that is name equal to browser, and value will be, let's say, Chrome. So similarly I need to provide four parameters, right? So browser is there, then I will have to pass the URL. Okay, so your application URL https, let's say let's say qa.com. Then we have user ID, right? So user ID parameter, user ID is, let's say, ABCD, and password, let's say XYZ. Okay, so these are my four parameters, okay, that we are going to send to this test. Okay, as a part of test we are going to run the setup method, and for the setup method we are going to say send these four parameters. Okay, four parameters and their different values. Okay, so this is for one test. For second test, same I can do. I can send the different data or different values for these four parameters. Okay, so browser is, let's say, this time I will pass Firefox. Okay, let the URL same on the QA server only. Then we will send some other user2. Okay, and password, let's say anything. Okay, so I'm going to run two tests. Okay, same method I'm going to run, but different set of these parameters values, four parameters. So as we are going to send these four parameters to this test, for this test method setup, we need to catch these values in our test method. Okay, so @parameters annotation, and inside this curly bracket you need to provide the parameters name. Okay, not the values. Values will be fetched when we run our TestNG XML file. So you need to provide the parameter names. Okay, so first parameter is browser. So in double quote you need to provide the parameter name. Okay, separated by comma, then provide the second parameter name. Okay, so when we run our testng XML file, all the values for these 4 parameters will be given to this test method here. Okay, so we will get those values here, and that values will be passed to this setup method. So this relation will be, okay, direct connection, means this is the first parameter, so this value will be given to this parameter. Okay, so by mistake if you define the browser name at the second place, that will create issue in your test case. Okay, so make sure whatever value of the parameter we are going to use, the place should be correct one. Okay, so first place I am going to use the browser name, then at second place I will get the URL that I will catch here in the string URL, then user ID I have this string UID variable, and this is the password at the end. Okay, so you need to make sure the order of the parameters and order of the variables that you are going to use in your test methods. So once we get these 4 values for the setup method, then simply we need to use in our actual Selenium code. Okay, so here I am just going to print these values. So here I will write browser is, so this is my browser. Okay, so similarly let me print the all the 4 values. Okay, so this is how I am going to print the values of these 4 parameters. So let us run our two tests, test1 and test2, for different set of data for these 4 parameters. Okay, two tests all passed, and in the console you will see the values. So for first test, browser is Chrome, URL is app.qa.com, user ID, password, ABCD and XYZ. Okay, so these are the values that we have sent from the XML file, right? It is correct. And for second test, we have passed the Firefox browser, right? Firefox, then server is same, then user2 and ASED as a password. Okay, so this is how you can run a same test case with the different set of data, and those values we got from the testng XML file by using the this parameter tag, provide the name and its value, and whatever parameter name you have provided here, the same name you need to provide at the rate in this at the rate parameters annotation. Okay, separated by the comma. Okay, quite simple to use this parameterization concept. Okay, so we have seen now at the test level. So let's see what is at the suite level. That means I want to run both these test cases or test on, let's say, same browser. Okay, so some parameters I need to keep common for all the test methods. Okay, so if I am running my test cases, I want to run on only Chrome browser, and this should be applicable for all the tests. Okay, so I should not require to add these parameters for every test. For example, I want to run the test1 on Chrome and test2 also on the Chrome. Okay, so instead of defining these separate parameters for both the test, we know this is the common, so we can take these parameters outside of the test. Okay, and we can define it at the suite level. Okay, so whatever test available in this suite, this parameter will be applicable for all those tests, right? So suite is nothing but the collection of the test, right? So whatever parameters we have defined at the suite level will be applicable for all the test in the testng XML file under this suite. Okay, so I have removed this parameter, browser parameter, from the test1, and I will remove from the test2 as well. Okay, so let us rerun this now. So in the console for both the test, you will see browser is Chrome, and for second test as well, we got the browser is Chrome. Okay, so that is the use of parameter at the suite level. If there is a requirement that some parameters you need to define or you need to use the same values for all the test in your suite, test suite, then you can define that parameter at the suite level instead of at the test level. Okay, so what if I have parameters, the same parameter at the suite level and test level? Okay, for example, I am going to use these parameters at the suit level, the same parameter name equal to browser, and same parameter I have here as well. But for test level, I am going to use some different value. Let's say Firefox, right? And for second test also, I am going to use some other. Let's say Edge. So what will happen? TestNG will come to know that this parameter is at the suit level, and we have one parameter at the test level as well. So on which browser your test should will run in this case, whether it will run on Firefox browser or Chrome browser, or whether it will run on Edge, the second test, whether it will run on the Edge browser or on the Chrome browser. Okay, so always remember that when we define the same parameter at the suit level and test level, TestNG will always give preference to the parameter defined at the test. Okay, if TestNG found that parameter is available at the TestNG test level, then it is going to use that value of that parameter. Okay, that means it is going to give preference to this parameter browser, and it will use this Firefox value for this first test. Similarly, for second test, it will use the browser value is equal to Edge. Okay, and in case if it does not find the parameter at the test level, then obviously it is going to use the value at the suit level. So let us see that now. So for first test, it should use the Firefox, and for second test, it should use the Edge. And another combination that we have seen is, let us remove this parameter from the test. So for first test, I don't have any parameter, so it should use the parameter at the suit level, and for second test, we have the parameter. Okay, so you can see it has used the Chrome and Edge. So please remember this, when you define the same parameter at the test level and suit level, then preference will be given to the parameter defined at the test level. Okay, so we are done with the first part. Then let us see the another important scenario. What will happen if user did not provide any parameter from the test.ng XML file? That means I have defined some parameter for this setup method. It is going to use these 4 parameters, but by mistake I forgot to pass the value for that parameter. Let's say I am going to use this browser. Okay, let me remove this browser parameter. So for first test, okay, I do not have any parameter like browser, but this setup method is expecting some value for this browser name, which is coming from this browser parameter, but user is not providing any value for the browser parameter. We have only these 3 parameters, and they are different values. Okay, and same for the second test, let's say. So for this setup method, we are supposed to pass the value for the browser. Okay, but by mistake I forgot to send the value or define the parameter at the test level or suit level. So what will happen? So it will give some error. Let us see that. So testng in the console you will see it will give you error. This parameter browser is required by at the test on the method setup. Okay, and you can see but has not been marked as optional or defined. Okay, so we are going to see about this optional, but it is saying this parameters at, that is going to use by this at the test method is not defined by the user. Okay, and that's why it has given this testng exception. If your test method is expecting some parameters, and if you have defined this at the parameters annotation, and if you have defined that parameter inside this at the parameter annotation, then you're supposed to provide some values of these parameters. Okay, so you must define that parameter, this name and its value. Okay, otherwise it will give the testng exception here. It may happen that user do not provide any value for that parameter, but there is a way by which we can overcome this situation. Okay, by using this at the rate optional annotation. Okay, so let's see how we can use this at the rate optional annotation. Okay, so for the setup method, it is expecting some value for this browser name, but I am not providing that value of the parameter from the XML file. So what I will do, I will define at the rate optional here. Okay, optional bracket, I will provide what value this testng test method should use in case I do not provide any browser name value from the testng XML file. So in case user do not provide any value for the browser name, this setup method should use this Chrome browser. That means by default I want to run my test cases on the Chrome browser only. Okay, but I can customize it. I can pass the different values for these parameters. I will just have to provide define the parameter here and define its value. So at the rate optional annotation and the value you need to provide. So for both the tests, it should use that default value, the optional value. So you can see here browser is Chrome, and for second test also browser is Chrome. Okay, so that is the use of this at the rate optional annotation. See here specifies that the current parameter is optional. TestNG will pass in a specified default value or null if none is specified. Okay, that means I have defined some value here. I have given Chrome value, but in case I do not provide any value, it will use the null. Okay, so let us see that now. Let me save it. So I am not providing any value for this optional. So it will use the null. Okay, so both these points are very important. In case if you provide any value, it will use that value as optional. But in case you do not provide any value inside this bracket, it will use the null. So I think I'm done with the first part by using how we can do the parameterization using at the rate parameters annotation in TestNG class and parameter tag in the TestNG XML. And then we have seen how we can use it at the test level and suit level. And if you define this same parameter at both test level and suit level, preference will be always given to the parameter defined at the test level. Okay, and then we see that what will happen if user do not provide any value for the parameters from the TestNG XML file. So your test method is expecting some value as we have used the parameter at the rate parameter annotation, and we have defined that parameter inside the curly bracket, but you are not providing any value from the XML file. Then in that case you will get the TestNG exception. Okay, and how we can overcome that? By using the at the rate optional annotation. Okay, so in this case also we have seen two scenarios. In case user provide any optional value, your test method is going to use that value, but if user do not provide any value inside the bracket, it will use the null. So that's all for this session, guys. Let me know if you don't understand anything from this session. So thanks for watching.